Well, it's that time again where you all yell at me in the comments because my ranking isn't identical to yours. Or maybe it's just completely upside down. All jokes aside, Assassin's Creed has released 14 mainline titles to date. They're all unique in their own way, but how good are they really? Well, today I'm going to rank all of them from worst to best in a futile attempt to order this crazy series. 2 new games have released since the last time I did this, and my opinions have changed drastically in some areas. So it will be interesting to see how this ranking shakes up things from the previous one. As always, it's just my opinion, and it's okay if we disagree. Also, there's going to be pretty big spoilers for all the games throughout this ranking. Right, let's rank all 14 games and see what my favorite and least favorite games in the series are. The answers might surprise you. Now, I want to be clear here. I like all of the games on this list. I enjoy each of them in different ways, but something has to be last, and unfortunately for Rogue, that's you. Rogue had a great premise. See the War of Centuries from the other side of the coin, and from a traitor to the assassins nonetheless. This is a great starting point. Sadly, that's about where the good ideas end when it comes to the story. Rogue just fundamentally doesn't understand the assassins or the Templars. In my opinion, this game shouldn't have changed the assassins into crazy terrorists just so we wouldn't feel bad killing them. Assassins are already very morally grey. I mean, they kill people. That's their job. They also have plenty of problems and contradictions of their own that this story could have delved into. The Brotherhood preaches freedom yet demands obedience. They desire peace, but kill to obtain it. These are interesting facets that the game could have dealt with. This would have been extremely interesting to me as a fan of all the nuanced writing of the games that came before it. Rogue, however, decided to make the assassins cartoonishly evil. I mean, they start poisoning innocents for goodness sake. The assassins are portrayed as literal terrorists, blinded by a lust for power. They break every one of their tenants and have little concern for anything but themselves. They build safe houses and mark them with huge flags. A secret organization, by the way. This is the kind of thing Altair reformed them from. He did away with castles on the hill and power grabs. I understand that the Brotherhood could lose its way, that's not out of the question. It's just a bit boring when you could have exposed the problems that already exist within the Brotherhood. Shay as a character is fine. Irish people have a problem with his accent, and yeah, I get it, but it doesn't bother me, as I'm not Irish, so it sounds just fine to me. His motivations are sound, he makes decisions that make sense. I do think that if he had stayed, he could have attempted to reform the Brotherhood from within. A lot of pain and suffering could have been avoided. But I don't honestly think that's a problem with the writing. His actions make sense. I also don't have a problem with short games. I constantly defend Mirage haters who scream it's not 30 hours long. But for the story they wanted to tell, Rogue is just too short. It requires much more in-depth stories and explanations of things that happen and why. I just don't think it's long enough to really explore this concept at all. Gameplay-wise, it's fine. It's Black Flag in a worse setting, with a few added extras. As I say, I like this game, but it's just got a few too many issues that I can't ignore, and so it's my least favorite game in the series. This game's fallen quite a lot in my ranking. I'm ordering these games as Assassin's Creed games, so as one, it's fallen all the way to 13th. Odyssey is a very fun game. It's junk food. You don't have to really pay too much attention and you can have a lot of fun with it. I always do. I love Greece, I love Cassandra, and I love being in this world. If we were ranking these just as games, it would shoot up the ranks quite a few spots. Unfortunately, it just doesn't have enough Assassin's Creed DNA to really push it higher on this list. It doesn't deal with assassins, Templars, or anything to do with freedom versus control. It has a lot to do with the Isu, but I think they did this wrong by giving us too much information about them. The Isu are way cooler when they're mysterious and we don't know much about them. The world, however, Greece is just beautiful. It's vibrant, its views are breathtaking. This map is utterly gigantic, which isn't always a positive. I just think it wastes development time and money creating these needlessly huge maps. How much cooler could Athens be if the map designers didn't have to spend hundreds of hours designing 20 other islands? They could have spent the time adding in more details, more interesting things to do, or maybe even some parkour pathways. That'd be nice. Speaking of which, this is the worst parkour in the entire series, hands down. The world is not designed with parkour in mind at all. There's no pathways, no quick starters, and basically nothing fun to do with the climbing or movement whatsoever. You simply run at a wall, building, or straight up a cliff face, and your very own demigod will go straight up. It's incredibly boring and offers nothing in the form of skill expression or progression. It's the same at moment 1 as it is at moment 100. With the exception that it actually gets worse at level 20 when they remove all the fall damage. There's no consequences for making mistakes. You can just jump anywhere and you're fine. I'm sure this is a plus for some people, and honestly, because the parkour's so bad, it kind of is in a way. It means I can get it over with faster and move on to the actual fun parts of the game. Stealth is also a big issue. There aren't many tools to help you in stealth, you simply have to run around killing people. For a series that's about assassins and stealth kills, they sure did drop the ball on this one. I also hate the assassinate crit mechanic. It slows down stealth and you still don't know if you're going to kill them afterwards anyway. Stealth in this game is basically you crouching around, getting close to enemies to see if you can even one-shot them or not. Then if not, walking away so you don't alert everyone when Cassandra's blade to the neck isn't enough to end someone. Combat is also floaty, and if you built to be a stealth character, you do almost no damage. It's still a sea of bloated health bars even if you do build for combat, but at least it's a bit better. The best thing about this game is that it's still fun somehow. Despite all my negatives, I still enjoy this game a lot. Cassandra is great and the game lays itself out like a Greek play. It's comical and kinda relaxing in a way. As I said, it's a junk food game, but it's still a lot of fun. While Valhalla still hasn't moved out of 12th place, it's not exactly lost this time, so that's a positive. Since my last list, I have replayed the first 20 hours of this game and thought more deeply about the story they told. I appreciate this story so much. There is a lot of bloat in Valhalla, but if you cut all the fat out of the way, there's a fine sizzling steak there just begging to be eaten. As I said, I'm ranking these as AC games, so things like story get a higher weight than graphics or music or even gameplay. For me, Valhalla finally made the modern day great again. Sure, the gameplay of it isn't that great, but the story brought back all the old love I had for modern day in a big way. After Desmond died, Assassin's Creed has failed to make a compelling modern day narrative that actually meant anything to me. And I think this was by design. I think Ubisoft would completely remove it if they could get away with it. And a game that I haven't talked about yet certainly made a great attempt at that. Modern day finally meant something again, bringing back plot points from older games, explaining that Desmond only delayed the catastrophe and that Layla and her team would have to find a way to stop it completely. There was also the mystery of the anomalies and who led them to Eivor's body. This all culminates in a fantastic ending where we see Layla join Desmond in an afterlife and work to find a solution to save the planet. Basim used the assassins to get the staff and regenerate himself into the modern day. It has the wow factor many of the recent games are missing, the big crescendo ending, and I loved it. The problem is that there's just so much nonsense to get to it. Half of the game feels like filler and that should have been side quests. There are plenty of great arcs with characters that were all interesting. I remembered them from my previous playthroughs and I found most of the character writing to be stellar. There is still a distinct lack of Assassin's Creed stuff in this game though. Having 2 assassin pals and a bureau does not an Assassin's Creed make. The biggest problem is that you're playing as a Viking in a country that isn't super developed at this time. Buildings aren't very tall, the world is sparsely populated, and Vikings have nothing in common with the Creed or their methods. This series started off being mostly based in cities of well-established countries where we played as an assassin, and Valhalla just isn't like that at all. Eivor is also kind of an empty shell where the characters around them shine more than they do. The gameplay also has problems for the same reasons stated above. Vikings just aren't very assassin-like. The stealth doesn't feel great. It's sneak through a bush simulator with slow-ass kill animations and a sluggish parkour with very little chance to actually use it. The world just isn't set up for assassins. It's perfect if you want to be a Viking raider, but as an old-school AC fan, I just want to be an assassin and live that fantasy. Overall, it's still a fun game. It's just hard to find another 60 hours to play through it again knowing there's a bunch of boring crap in the way of the decent parts. It might come as a surprise to many of you to find Shadows here at number 11. It seems that this is a very polarizing game. I think a lot of you will think this is too low, and many more think it's too high. Shadows just has a lot of problems, but there's a few standout features that I feel propel it above the entries before it, and the negatives are just too heavy to put it any higher. Let's start with the positives. Stealth in Shadows is fantastic. The addition of hiding in the shadows and a bigger emphasis on being quiet really adds to the assassin fantasy. I absolutely love sneaking around in this game as Nawe. She has a bunch of cool tools and abilities to become the most efficient shinobi you've ever seen. She is also incredibly fast in everything she does. Her kill animations are quick and let you get back into the action fast. She is the fastest assassin to date, and since the parkour update, she's also especially effective at moving around her environment. Gameplay for Nawe is everything I want out of an RPG Creed game. The second big plus for me is that the world is stunning. It's the most beautiful game I've ever played, and I enjoyed just riding around on my horse exploring the map. Not for things to do, but just to see what it looks like. How beautiful is the view over that next hill? Whether there's much to actually do in the world is a different story. I have never opened photo mode so many times in my life though. I just loved how this world looked. Another major improvement for me was the new seasons and weather tech. Man, what an amazing system. Every season looks entirely different and completely changes the feel and vibe of an area. It also switches up gameplay. Icicles falling in the winter, giving away your position, or certain plants not growing in autumn so you can't hide in the bushes anymore. The weather looks great too. It just seems like a big step up in this regard. Okay, now on to the bad stuff. Shadows starts off with a bang. The first 10 hours are so great. The story is engaging and you just have Nawe. You're learning her story and progressing towards allying with Yasuke. I loved it. I truly thought this was going to be one of the best games in years from this series. However, after you unlock Yasuke, the story falls off a cliff. It's not Yasuke's fault either. From here on out, his story is actually the better of the two. If they had leaned further into the assassin parts of the story, this could have been a winner. Instead, it's pushed to the side, and the closest we get to actual Assassin's Creed is a few notes after some parkour challenges. Yasuke's story gets interesting towards the end, but it's all a little too late by then. The biggest problem for this game is that for Act 2, it's just the same game on repeat for about 15 hours. You can approach any of the main missions in any order you like, and none of them connect to each other at all. Just a list of targets you need to tick off a list. I discussed this at length in my story video for Shadows, so you can go check that out if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts on that. The fact you can complete them in any order means there can't be any meaningful connections between them, and Nawe and Yasuke can't really have any character development. The game feels like it's at a standstill until about the final 5 hours start to get back on track before it abruptly ends in a way that doesn't feel at all satisfying. It was clearly cut short to leave you wanting more, so you'll buy the DLC. So the story sucks, and for me, so does playing as Yasuke. As a character, he's pretty decent, but as with Valhalla, I don't play these games to go roaring in and cutting down my enemies. I want to be an assassin like the title suggests. His movement feels bad, he's slow, and sure, it's fun to cut down a few enemies from time to time, but I think I just prefer to stick with Nawe. Few more things before we move on. Non-pre-rendered cutscenes or chatting to NPCs are inexcusable. They look like utter shit, and have been getting worse for years. And there's also a lot, and I mean a lot, of bad voice acting in this game. Honestly, I wanted to love Shadows, but it just has too many drawbacks that just keep it here in the like category. Yeah, sorry Shadows, I'm friend zoning you. Syndicate is that one game that I really wish they just got right. So Industrial Revolution London is one hell of an awesome setting. It's perfect. From the buildings to the carriages, the bridges, trains, and even the clothing of the time. It's just such an interesting place to be. Syndicate is one of the coolest and best looking worlds in the series, but when it comes to gameplay, it lets itself down a bit. Parkour is again neglected. The streets are too wide, so the buildings are so far apart from each other, which means there can't be any meaningful movement throughout the city. And the outsides of buildings are just too vertical. Now maybe that's unavoidable with this time period. I don't know, but other games in the series made high buildings work for parkour, so I'm sure they could have come up with something. And they did, it just isn't a very good solution. The rope launcher is a travesty of design. Like Odyssey, it just completely removes parkour from the game. It makes it pointless. You can just simply press a button and get to the top of any building, no skill or fun needed. I think there was probably a better solution in creating better ways of parkouring up buildings, not eliminating the need for it at all. I think the rope launcher could still have existed in some form, using it to only get from rooftop to another rooftop rather than having it powered and removing a core pillar of the series. Stealth in Syndicate is actually pretty great. The systems are fun. There's a few new ideas here like kidnapping in disguises, and I also really like the black box missions in Syndicate. They're some of the best designed missions in the entire series. There's plenty of optional objectives that reward the player with interesting kills or opportunities. Combat, however, is a bit of a dud for me. I feel like I'm just wailing my hands around scratching the enemy with a spork until they get bored and fall over. Nothing feels impactful. You spam attack and occasionally have to dodge bullet shots. The only cool thing is the combo kills, which can be difficult to set up but reward you with some pretty decent kill animations. My main gripe with this game though is its tone and story. The tone is try-hard witty with a bunch of sarcasm and jokes that only land about a fifth of the time. The main offender here is Jacob. Every second is an opportunity for him to make a joke. I would have preferred Jacob to be a well-meaning, flawed assassin with a bit more depth, but instead we get Marvel anti-hero number 463. He just makes mistake after mistake and leaves his sister Evie to clean up his mess. I much prefer Evie as a character. She is straight-laced and is always looking to do the right thing despite being so stuck on the pieces of Eden that she misses the bigger picture sometimes. The main villains, and especially Crawford Starrick, are generic cartoon villains with nothing interesting to say at all. The whole story and tone is just lacking. It's jovial and playful in a time when London was a dark, miserable place. I would have preferred a more honest depiction of industrial London, and a story that took itself seriously. Jack the Ripper DLC is something that shows just how much better the main game could have been. Enjoying the video? Quick, subscribe before I make you angry with my next entry and you click off the video. I upload weekly Assassin's Creed content just like this video. Thanks. Oh boy, this is where the comments really start to roast me. I want to repeat that I do like all of these games, and Black Flag is no different. It's just not up there with my favorites like it is for a lot of people. But please let me explain before you wish illnesses upon my family. I am not really a fan of ship combat. Yeah, that's it. I said it. I'm not saying it's bad ship combat or anything like that. It's just not something that I really enjoy all that much. It's such a large part of the game that it brings it down to number 9. There are other problems with Black Flag too. The mission design is a bit lacking in my opinion. There's something like 20% of the missions are tailing missions. I'm not actually against tailing missions, but the ones in Black Flag just aren't very fun. I think there's ways to make them fun, but AC just hasn't cracked that code yet. I also think that the combat is too easy, in a way that isn't as fun as the other easy combat systems. For instance, the Ezio trilogy is pretty easy and simple, but it feels fun. Black Flag just feels a bit floaty and less responsive. Parkour is also toned down and less engaging, with the setting not handing them any favors in this area either. The world is beautiful, however, and a few cities or towns it does have are pretty interesting. I also like the Inagua Island hideout and Nassau. Where this game really shines is its story and character writing. This game has some of the best side characters in the series with their own arcs and moments to shine. Mary Reed, Blackbeard, and Charles Vane are all spectacular, and others are great too. Edward himself has a perfect arc throughout the game, and his story is one of tragedy, selfishness, and an ultimate revelation that he is making all the wrong decisions. I really enjoy this story. Although it's about pirates, it manages to weave in an assassin story about freedom, despite it not really seeming like it on the surface. The modern day, though, is another problem, unfortunately. It's the first game without Desmond, and the beginning of the end for decent modern day stories. Playing as an unvoiced, unnamed character working for Abstergo is just not it. And the things you do out of the Animus are also incredibly boring. Really? Hacking minigames? Come on. Desmond got to parachute into a building, parkour around a building that's under construction, use the apple to make a man shoot himself, and now I'm walking around with a tablet hacking things for a sage. What were they thinking? I've gone more in depth on these issues in the past, so I won't bore you with the details. Black Flag truly is a great pirate game, and it's a pretty decent Assassin's Creed game too. I love parts of it and put up with some other parts of it, and that's why it's at number 9. I always find it quite difficult to talk about Assassin's Creed 3. I'm not sure why. Maybe because upon release, I really didn't think it was very good. Years later, after I got back into Assassin's Creed, I respected it a lot more for the things it gets right. And looking at where the series is now, I really appreciate it. Initially, I didn't like Connor either. I was like, where's my Ezio? But over the years I've grown to understand Connor much better, and honestly, it was quite ballsy of them to go with a character so completely different from Ezio. Connor is a no-nonsense character. He takes shit from no one and is a strong leader. If you do all the homestead missions, you get to see different sides of his character that are not shown throughout the main narrative. He's grown on me a lot over the years, and now I'd say he's actually a brilliant character that is completely underrated. I'll talk more on that when I finally get around to doing my character studies series. There's about 4 paragraphs written about Altair so far, so it's a ways off before we get to Connor. Let's talk about the story itself. There are definitely some interesting sections to this game's story. Firstly, we start off as Haytham. The first time around you have no idea you're playing as a Templar until the big reveal, and that is pretty damn awesome. You're with Haytham for a few hours before they throw this revelation at you. It's amazing. However, I wish we didn't have to go through another hour or so of tutorials with Connor after that, but hey, maybe it's worth the price. We meet the villains early on in this game, unlike the new entries who like to make everyone a mystery until the end, so there's no character build up to any of them. Anyways, that's a tangent we will not get stuck on today. The villains are strong, and they actually feel like villains. And then we get Connor's father, a man Torn. He was born an assassin and turned Templar. He is a smart man and such an interesting character. I really like the parts where Connor and Haytham work together. You can see both of them grappling with wanting to be father and son while also disagreeing on almost every moral point possible. Man, the writing is so interesting in some of these parts. It's really great. The modern day is also very decent in this game. The actual missions and gameplay are much better than most of the modern day segments in other games. While the ending might be a bit of a sore point for many, I don't actually mind that Desmond died. I just wish that it had been after he fulfilled his destiny like he was supposed to in the original concept of the story. Desmond dying is not the bad part for me, it's how it was done. There was just a big build up to nothing. Combat is great in this game, one of my favorites. And I just love the tomahawk as a weapon, with its little assassin logo blade. Holy shit, that's so fucking cool. Stealth is a bit like Black Flag. Hide in bushes, I don't know, it's just not ideal. The world itself also leaves a lot to be desired. The early streets of America are not super exciting to be in or to traverse. I used to say the setting was boring, but now I actually think there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. It's obviously not as good as revolutionary Paris or Italy's Renaissance, but yeah, it's not bad. I think it's a solid game, and that's why it's here in the ranking, right near the middle. A lot of newer fans to the series might think this game is just really bad, but as a concept, as a story, as a jumping off point for the series, it couldn't be any better. This game was so unique and so special it spawned a global phenomenon. Assassin's Creed is huge, and it's all thanks to one of my favorite characters, Altair, and his fight for freedom during the Crusades. This game invented one of Ubisoft's most famous mechanics, the parkour system, that has still not been replicated by any other company to this day. Parkour is special in Assassin's Creed, and unlike any other game. Even the newest games don't know how to do it right. The biggest complaint people have against AC1 is that it feels repetitive. And yes, it is repetitive in its structure, but you are often not doing the same thing more than a few times. It feels more like it because it's always the same structure. Go to a city, meet the Rafik, find information about the target, return to the bureau, and then take out your target. Sure, but the actual investigations you do can be varied to the point where you only do them 2 to 3 times in a playthrough. AC1's stealth mechanics and combat are nothing to write home about, but the vibe they present is insane. Altair hides in plain sight, walking right beside his targets completely hidden. It's so cool being one with the crowd, using social stealth to be completely invisible. And on top of that, the story is so perfect. It's the first game in the franchise, and it eloquently sets the groundwork for the series. I wish the series had continued to stick closer to AC1, but again, that's another video topic. The way it tells this fascinating story is, well, fascinating. You are fed clues slowly from each target, making you have more questions than answers as the mystery builds. The confessions in AC1 are probably the best in the series in terms of writing. Each interaction is so important, every little detail of every conversation. Every target makes Altair and the player question their motives and the people around them, whether what they're doing is right or who to trust, or even if their morals are correct in the first place. It all culminates in a revelation that Al-Mualim is a traitor. He means to kill Altair and assume control of everything using the Apple of Eden. Which, by the way, was such a cool thing all on its own. These days we take pieces of Eden for granted. Eivor can carry about 6 pieces with them during Valhalla. But back then, it was so insane to see what seemed to be a fairly grounded historical story turned into a huge sci-fi mystery. Altair himself is such an amazing character. He starts the game as an arrogant master and is soon demoted back to novice as he completely messes up the mission by breaking every tenet of the creed. He is reborn, and although it takes time, he changes, he grows, he learns and matures and turns into the leader that the assassins need. His exchanges with other characters change as he does too. They learn to respect him for who he is becoming. The writing and story of this game is just too good despite the gameplay lacking in some areas, that it has to go this high up. What a masterpiece. The biggest problem with Unity is that it could have been so much more. Once again, the story just doesn't fulfill its promise of having a huge, powerful narrative that makes you think and reflect. Unity's main story is fairly shallow and just leaves a lot to be desired. Not to mention the modern day is absolutely pathetic. They somehow made the assassins boring. I don't know how you do that, but they did. We have an entire brotherhood working in Paris. It's strong and has many members, yet we barely form any kind of relationship with any of them. I seem to be alone in this opinion, but the love story in Unity is actually the best bit. It's a classic tragedy, and I think it's compelling enough that it's the most important and interesting part of the narrative. Arno and Elise were always destined to be this way. Lovers fighting on opposite sides of a war. The characters' motives make sense and match what I think they would do. Elise was trouble since day one for Arno, and she forever is until her death. That poor little bastard just followed her to the ends of the earth. When it comes to parkour, sure, it's got some great animations and the parkour down button is rarely something I wish was implemented like this in all future releases. However, it's still a bit broken even to this day. People who play this game non-stop still have moments where Arno just does what he wants. I do like it though. There's something about it that just feels right. I love the Phantom Blade. It is quick and deadly. It makes stealth runs so much more exciting and fun to pull off. It also looks pretty stylish. The tools in stealth are great and contribute majorly to the way this game feels to play. Unity is a fun game despite the ever-present bugs and glitches, and the lackluster story, it still just feels fun to play either way. This was the first game to have black box missions, and they're pretty amazing too. Syndicates were better, but for a first attempt, man, they are great. I love the ability to follow some predestined steps to get a cool kill or find my own completely unique way to assassinate my target. We have to talk about Paris though. What a magnificent setting. Although the plot doesn't use it to its fullest, the actual look and atmosphere it delivers is one of the best in the series. The amount of details stuck into this map is insane. The dense crowds and the parkour routes have all been designed perfectly. Paris is an assassin's playground and I love to just run around this world. Basically, this game had all the best ingredients to be perfect. The chefs, however, were just not up to the task. Actually, I think maybe they just needed more development time. Okay, this is gonna ruffle some feathers too. There is a large campaign of hate against this game, but I just don't see it myself. Mirage is so much fun. I cannot even explain it. From moment one, it's just a good time. Baghdad, for a start, is a stunning city. The round city with its close together buildings, parkour routes, busy streets, trees, gardens, and the level of detail put into every inch of the city results in one of the best designed places in the entire series. A spin-off DLC turned into a full game, and they created this city? Damn. It's actually astonishing what they managed to create despite their limited resources and framework in which they were bound by. The parkour system is not perfect. Its mechanics are a bit clunky, but the city itself is perfect for stalking around the rooftops as an assassin. It feels like the older games even if the mechanics aren't as good. I feel like an assassin, and that is more than I can say for some of the entries earlier on this list. Stealth is great. I have no real complaints about it at all. The tools Bassam has access to are engaging and fun to use. Some require thought and planning, while others like smoke bombs are completely overpowered. But I don't mind that. I don't need these games to be difficult. The power fantasy is enough. So before I glaze it too much, let's talk about the story. Obviously it's limiting when you're doing a prequel to an already established character, but this story just wasn't it. It's lackluster in so many areas. It doesn't really fill in many details about Bassam as I would have liked either. And as you get towards the halfway point of the story, the rest of it kinda just feels like filler until the very end. The writing is just not very good and doesn't live up to the standards I want for this series. Nothing really happens in the entire middle section of the story. We just kill order members because that's what assassins do. I do, however, like that there is a brotherhood. We have bureaus, and it really tries to feel like AC1 in some of those areas. Returning to talk to bureau leaders, acquiring the feather, and executing our targets. This game oozes Assassin's Creed. It's not ashamed to be an AC game. You can say whatever you want, but there's no denying these developers love Assassin's Creed and wanted to really make this a return to roots. The mileage on the result of that varies from person to person. I think they made a pretty good attempt. It was never going to be like AC1, but for a small team, they did some pretty good work in my opinion. From the robes to the hideout and bureaus, and the way we have ceremonies and promotions, it all feels like an AC game, and it wants to be one. I feel like some of the newer games, especially ones made by Quebec, that they just do not want to be AC games. But Mirage, it sure as hell is one, and I love it. I have seen this game win top spot in so many of these ranking videos, but not for me. And were this list purely objective and no other factors were influencing my decision whatsoever, I'm sure it would be for me too. Unfortunately, that isn't how the world works. I do, however, adore this game. It took everything AC2 did and stepped it up a notch. This game has without a doubt the best side content in the entire series. They really knocked it out of the park with this one. The Romulus tombs, the Christina missions, and Leonardo's war machines are some of the most beloved missions in the entire series. Leonardo's war machines even having their own unique maps and mechanics for each one. A lot of effort went into making these missions. They're not just fetch quests or more of the same thing you've done 100 times. My personal favorites are the tombs, and I will forever long for their return. Let's not forget the Brotherhood system itself. The first time we had assassins we could call upon to help us in stealth and in battle. We could recruit and train our assassins and send them on missions. It was a really cool feature. We even had ceremonies for our best assassins who reached level 10. Let's talk about the story itself. While I don't personally find it as strong as the other two Ezio games, it's still strong with interesting, if a bit hammy villains. Cesare is very over the top and cartoonish, less so than Starrick though. He can still be intimidating, unlike the likes of Starrick. Cesare has an army and power, you can feel it. Also very much like Rome despite its open areas without much to do. The city itself is beautifully recreated and is a video game that inspired me to travel, and that in turn gave me the confidence to move to the other side of the world to live, leaving my family and friends to continue my life. I owe a lot to this game, especially when any trivia questions come up about Rome. I always get them, and everyone's like, how did you know that? Assassin's Creed, that's how I know all the rest of my history as well. Combat and stealth are very similar to the other two Ezio games, although this time combat is even easier, and so is stealth with the addition of the crossbow. I don't mind the counter kill system. Sure, it's overpowered, easy, and broken, but Ezio is a fucking badass, so I think it fits. The crossbow was a perfect addition and absolutely makes the game funner. It works in a similar way to the Phantom Blade in Unity in that it speeds up and makes stealth so much more cinematic and epic. Overall, this game is perfection. It has a special place in my heart, and I will forever replay it over and over and over again. Before Origins released, I had stopped playing AC games after AC3. I just wasn't into it back then. But when I saw Origins, I was right back in. I was excited for an AC game, and it turned out to be a pretty amazing time in my opinion. Origins is not perfect by any means, and it was the start of Ubisoft's attempt to bloat this series to high hell and start to remove everything that made it special in order to pump out games that would appeal to a bigger market. But as for Origins itself, I absolutely loved it. Origins' biggest selling points for me are our main characters, Bayek and Aya, the host of characters surrounding them, and the world in which they exist. Let's start with the latter. Egypt is utterly stunning. It feels absolutely gigantic, despite being smaller than the two RPGs that followed it. And it feels large in a good way, like a realistic way. Origins is filled with iconic places, including the pyramids, the Sphinx, and Alexandria Lighthouse, not to mention a few little jaunts to Rome itself. There is just something about this map that makes it feel a lot more real than the RPGs that followed it. I feel like I am actually roaming around ancient Egypt. Even the completely empty deserts add to the feeling of truly being here. This game pulled me back into the series, and after it did, I started playing all the older games again, and playing the ones that I hadn't played before either, which led me to creating Assassin's Creed content and loving this series even though it trips and stumbles all the time. Moving on to Bayek, one of my favorite characters in the series. The writing is decent, but what really pulls Bayek forward is the unbelievably perfect performance from Abu Bakr Salim. Honestly, every time this man feels any sort of emotion, I feel it too. It's an outstanding performance that will forever lie in my heart. Bayek and Aya present a dynamic that I rarely see in games, and that is that of a convincing couple. Their portrayal is something else, and the game has me feeling the weight of their loss and the revenge story that eventually tears them apart. As for the story itself, it's not the best in this series, and its modern day might as well not exist, but I could say that for over half the entries in this series. As an origin story of the Brotherhood, it leaves a lot to be desired. I felt like they could have done a lot more with the actual formation of the Brotherhood. It just kind of feels like that part is very rushed and glossed over, which is the big part everyone would have been interested in this game. We don't really see the formation of the Creed or its tenets at all. Gameplay has highs and lows. The world, while beautiful, isn't really set up for parkour, and the mechanics are lacking too. The combat isn't as good as it could be, but it's fine to me honestly. It doesn't really bother me much at all. Stealth has also taken a backseat, which is not something I agree with. Overall though, its characters and world pull you through to the end. I just love being in this world and experiencing this game, from the opening to the end. It's just so much fun. Once again, objectively, AC2 probably isn't the second best game in the series, but I think it would be pretty close. Subjectively, it's absolutely my second. How can we talk about AC2 without first discussing the man, the myth, the legend, Ezio Auditore da Firenze? This was the first AC game I ever played, and it was the first time I ever really connected and fell in love with a video game character. Ezio to this day is still my favorite character in any game ever, and this was his introduction to the world. Of course I love this game. Ezio is a flawed human. He makes mistakes, he disrespects the dead, he fails, he is ruled by his emotions, but that is what makes him so compelling. Ezio's story is the first in many revenge stories in this series, so it wasn't stale by this point, and I felt it. It felt heart-wrenching, and I can't explain the feeling when you finally kill Uberto and do your epic Auditore speech. Ezio's tale of revenge takes us all over Italy to many different places. I fell in love with the cities of Italy, the characters Ezio meets, and the gameplay of being a sneaky little assassin. The side characters are also extremely compelling, even the ones that aren't around for long. Ezio's family, the actual people, not the song, feel real, like they are really his family. They add so much to Ezio as a character. Not to mention the other amazing side characters that all mold Ezio into the prophet they need. From Mario, Machiavelli to Teodora, all the way to Leonardo da Vinci. They're all stellar characters that bring this world and story to life, enriching the mystery of the game and Ezio himself. Back to the world of AC2 though, Italy is a special place, and especially during the Renaissance. There's tall buildings and narrow streets littered with parkour paths and spectacular views. The game possesses an immense amount of amazing buildings to visit and explore that really made you feel like you existed within this world. Gameplay-wise, the parkour routes were more interesting. The system was a little bit easier to grapple with after AC1, and it just felt great. Combat was effective. It's not the best, but I still think it's fun to counter-kill these grunts. Very satisfying. Stealth is simple, but it uses social stealth to a greater degree than later games. But the missions themselves are all so unique that the stealth system being a bit lacking doesn't matter because every mission is unique and must be approached in a different way. There are some absolutely fantastic missions in this game. Gliding into the palace for one, and just the beautiful opening act with Federico. There's honestly too many to mention, as they're all great. This story to me is so brilliant. Sure, the villains are a bit cartoony, but they do have deeper layers. Overall though, the mystery, the revenge, and the emotional weight of this story are all stellar. It's one of my favorite moments ever, walking into a vault and talking to Minerva. I was mind blown when I first played. Then it hit even harder when she talked directly to Desmond. Honestly, I was just blown away by how awesome it was. I absolutely loved it. And for that, and all the reasons mentioned, it's sitting pretty at number 2. So for many of the same reasons as AC2, Revelations is my favorite game in the series. Now gameplay, mission, and side content wise, I think Brotherhood is better. But there's just something about the ending of Revelations that just holds so much weight over me. As with the ending of AC2, I was astonished with how it all went down. We finally make it to Masyaf Castle with all the keys needed to open Altair's library. We walk down the corridor to find Fratello Mio, Altair's skeleton sat in his chair awaiting Ezio. A man we had spent the entire game following and learning from. A person who meant a great deal not just to Ezio, but the entire Brotherhood. We then get to experience Altair's last memory, the last message to Ezio and to Desmond. This is just so damn powerful. We see an old and frail Altair walk to his final resting spot, and as he sits, the camera pans back around his chair to reveal Ezio. Everything about this is perfect. This is not even mentioning the big reveals from the Isu and Ezio speaking directly to Desmond. His realization that he is just a messenger for something that he will never understand or see for himself. The ending of his career as an assassin. To top it all off, we get to hear of the Isu's plight, how they were wiped out and how we can survive the impending doom. Not to mention, this is the last memory that Ezio had for Desmond, and that finally puts Desmond's mind back together. 4 time periods all together at one moment in time. The Isu through to Altair, to Ezio, and finally to Desmond. There are so many plot threads in this game that all somehow came together perfectly. And honestly, after following Altair all game, getting to put to rest our 2 amazing protagonists in such a beautiful way is truly special to me, and that's the main reason it's my favorite game. Now let's talk about the gameplay. So it's not too much different from Brotherhood. There's a few extra mechanics here and there, but it's all very similar. There's an expansion on the Brotherhood system where you can go on missions and train your assassins directly, which is pretty cool. Once reaching a certain level, they can be leaders of bureaus, which stops them ever being attacked. Speaking of which, the infamous tower defense missions are not exactly great, but if you look after your notoriety, you should only have to do it the one time during the tutorial. The world itself is interesting, but it doesn't have the diversity of AC2 or the spectacle of Brotherhood. It does, however, still have many amazing missions. I love the quests that lead you to the memory seals. They're all pretty fantastic, and there's also some spectacular set pieces. The main historical story has some interesting bumps and turns, but it's probably one of the weakest from the earlier games. But it's still pretty decent. It really shines with its overarching narrative of the modern day connecting to the Isu and to Altair. So overall, this game's entire story holds so much weight for me that it just couldn't beat any other game. I love Revelations, and it is my favorite game in the series. What's your top 5? Let me know down in the comment section. I read every comment and respond to as many as I can, so let me know why you do or don't agree with my list. Thanks to my one and only patron, Alex Applegate, and thank you everyone who's still listening to me blabber on. I'll see you all in the next one. Sticks out.